Go ahead and turn to Exodus chapter 17. And as you make your way there, let me say a big thank you for you making the decision and taking the time to view this video as a part of your online routine today or later on during the week. Thank you for taking that time. And if you're already a part of Calvary Church of the Nazarene family, do know that you have been very much missed over the last week and a half, really. It's been about that long since seeing people gathered together here at the church. So you're very much missed and loved. As most of you already know, I have already been adhering to a pretty strict quarantine process because of my connection, direct connection to people who have been confirmed for having the virus. And so that makes it even more of a need for me to not be with you physically this morning or any day right now until that time's passed. It has been a blessing to be able to talk to many of you on the phone. It's been encouraging for me, for sure, and I hope it's been encouraging for you. And I would encourage you to keep doing that as you call and contact other people in the church, making sure everybody is doing good during this time. If you're watching this video message but you have not ever been to Chicago Calvary Church of the Nazarene before, let me extend a genuine and heartfelt thank you for taking the time to view this message this morning. Hopefully there'll be a point in time when I can connect with you in person. But until then, at least there's an opportunity for you to get to know me a little bit more, perhaps get to know the church a little bit more in advance of an opportunity to meet us in person. And if you don't already know, my prayer is that you would also have the opportunity to get to know Jesus through the lives that we live, our words and our actions. Our hope as a church is for every word and every action to give glory to Him and in this world. So here we go. We are in the very early stages of setting up this YouTube channel, but one of the things we are putting together in the process is a playlist of worship songs that will be available below this video. You can search the playlist, and it'd probably be good to maybe watch a few of those worship songs prior to watching the message, or watch a few of them after. For those that are a part of Calvary, there will be songs on there you're familiar with. They're things that we've had a part of our worship routine before. There will also be some new songs on there too. And if there's any advice on some other songs we can add to that list, feel free to let us know. I would strongly suggest, like I said, listening to some of those songs before the message and after. The hope is also to have a specific playlist when it comes to these weeks that we're coming into, perhaps having specific songs that go along with that theme for that message. So be looking for that area too as far as a playlist. With all that being said, let me go ahead and read from the book of Exodus. The passage we'll be focusing on today is from the lectionary selections from March 15th, which we missed because we didn't have church last Sunday. We had the cancellation. So I'm going to use the March 15th lectionary. And if you're not familiar with the lectionary, this is the Book of Common Prayer. It takes a selection of passages from the Bible. It organizes them over a 3-year cycle and organizes them according to the church calendar. And so right now we're in the season of Lent, and so with the season of Lent, it's certain passages that go along with that. So I've been sticking with the lectionary here for the last year, since last Easter, and I have absolutely loved using the lectionary. It's been a new routine because usually I would do a series of messages, and I've gotten away from that and more stuck to the lectionary. It's been an added bonus to use the lectionary because time and time again, the passages that have come up have been very timely and powerful for the days we live in, and I think this week is no exception to that. So here we go. I'm going to read from Exodus chapter 17. Exodus chapter 17, I'm going to begin in verse 1 and read the first 7 verses. The whole Israelite community set out from the desert of Sin, traveling from place to place as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. So they quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." Moses replied, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to the test?" But the people were thirsty for water there, and they grumbled against Moses. They said, "Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children the livestock die of thirst?" Then Moses cried out to the Lord, "What am I to do with these people? They are almost ready to stone me." The Lord answered Moses, "Walk on ahead of the people. Take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. I will stand there before you by the rock of Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out for the people to drink." So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel. and he called the place Massa and Meribah, because the Israelites quarreled, and because they tested the Lord, saying, Is the Lord among us or not? Let me go ahead and give a bit more broad overview of the situation the Israelites have found themselves in, and you can go ahead and let me know if there's any way at all you can relate to their circumstances. At this moment in time for the Israelites, life as they has known it for decades, all of a sudden changed. For years and years, they had a work routine while living in Egypt, and now that was done. No more work. The activities that had defined their life day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year for generations had come to a screeching halt the moment they walked out of Egypt and crossed the Red Sea. All of a sudden, they do not have the vocational responsibilities filling up a large chunk of their daily lives. No sooner are they set free from a vocation that provided for their basic needs, their food and water, than the insecurities start to creep in. All of a sudden, they do not have the vocational responsibilities filling up a large chunk of their daily lives. No sooner are they set free from their vocation that provided for their basic needs than insecurities start to seep in to their lives. They are unemployed, and one of the first insecurities that sets in for this group of people has to do with food, which is in Exodus chapter 16. Where are they going to get the food they need to survive? And God provides the manna. Where the side of the Red Sea where they find themselves is actually a desert, a wilderness. Meanwhile, Egypt is on the other side of the Red Sea where they had just come from. A place that's not so far in their distant past in terms of time or location, but a place very far removed from in terms of their circumstances they were now in. In a relatively short period of time, their circumstances had changed dramatically. Time and again, the Israelites looked back on their time in Egypt, and they looked at it as a place where they had everything they needed. Food, water, and as much toilet paper as the eye could see. Probably made out of papyrus or some sort of material like that. And I know it doesn't necessarily say in Scripture that the Israelites had a toilet paper insecurity, but I think you and I both know at some point the discussion was going to come up. Where are we going to get the toilet paper we need in the desert? Over the course of many years, the Israelites had grown accustomed to waking up and entering into a day that was already planned pretty much from beginning to end, laid out in advance for them. Where they were going to work, what they were going to do, where they were going to get their food and water. While it may have been slavery, slavery had a certain level of security for them. And at this point, it's important to note, it's something I'll probably do in another message at another time, but when we hear and read about slavery in the Old Testament and the New, we really can't kind of pigeonhole that into what we think of when we think of the slavery of African Americans and the slave trade over the last, from a couple hundred years ago. So there isn't a false equivalency to have between those two kinds of slavery. So if you do make that false equivalency, you may find it hard to wonder why in the world would the Israelites want to go back to Egypt? If that's slavery, if that's what we think of when we think of slavery, why in the world would they want to go back to that? That doesn't make sense. So even though the Israelites were in slavery in Egypt, there were benefits to being slaves in Egypt. Provision and protection alongside being located in a powerful empire of its day, that had its benefits. My hope is that at this point, you already have some degree of connection between the radical transition Israel found itself in and the radical transition many people in our world are going through right now. The effects of today's pandemic may not be evenly felt by everyone, but I am fairly certain everyone has experienced enough of it to at least put themselves in the shoes of somebody far worse off. Perhaps in the shoes of a group of Israelites who have been suddenly cut off from a previous way of life where their needs have been provided for by Egypt. And so here they are on the front end of what is ultimately going to be a 40-year walk, 40-year wilderness adventure. A trip that is every bit as old as I am. I'm just now 41, so almost as old as I am. Only a few days into a new life, and only a few days removed from the old life in Egypt, and then you start to hear it. The grumbling. And what happens in the midst of their current predicament in the desert as a significant part of their grumbling is a glorification of the way things used to be. With their eyes, they take a look around at their present, and with their hearts, they turn back to Egypt. A sense of longing for the good old days. The good old days get lifted up onto a pedestal because when you feel like you're in the depths, from that vantage point, it looks like the glory days or the best days are in the rear view mirror. And then grumbling does what grumbling always does. It spreads like a virus. First, you have one person grumbling, then you've got 4 persons grumbling. Next thing you know, you've got the whole entire nation of Israel grumbling against Moses and against God. Discontent people begin their discussions about what should they do next. Why don't we just go back to Egypt? Why don't we just make Israel slaves again? Because slavery in Egypt sure seemed better than being free in the desert. This might be an easy question for you to answer, but did any of you happen to hear some grumbling over the course of the last 7 days? If you spent any amount of time on social media, you no doubt encountered all sorts of people grumbling about a whole host of things. Especially if people believe that the precautions and the restrictions that are going on are just way out of proportion. For those people, there was and is a much longer list of grievances and gripes for the ways that those precautions have inconvenienced their lives as they see it. For me, I caught myself griping when I was at Walmart, and no, it didn't have anything to do with toilet paper being run out or anything like that at all. I was actually near the toilet paper aisle at the time when my griping started, but it actually had to do with somebody who worked there. There was an employee, his name's Brian, a younger fellow, and he's somebody I see at the recreation center. We play basketball quite a bit. He's actually one of the better guys there playing. And as soon as I saw him, the gripe started to come out of my mouth. And the gripe was basically about the fact that the recreation center was closed. And over the course of this week, I couldn't go in and play basketball a couple nights a week like I'm used to. And so we kind of griped about that just a little bit, and I realized what I was doing and thinking about what I was going to be talking about this week, and changed topics, got back to how is he doing as an employee there. It's been a madhouse for sure, and so let him know I was thinking about him, concerned for him, praying that he can stay healthy and safe through all of this. What's funny about that, what's funny about that is the fact that people may be contagious or sick or vulnerable, but for me, what my mind was on was missing out on playing basketball, and missing out on watching basketball as well. Because for me, March Madness is one of my favorite things of the year, and it's probably the only reason we have cable television that we have, because there's a part of the year where I'm watching a lot. So that's just one more thing that I had to gripe about. Grumble, grumble, grumble. Discontent with the present, coupled with the glorification of the past, all the while forgetting something significant about the past as far as the Israelites were concerned. For all that they thought was good about the past, for all the things they thought was good about Egypt, for all of those things, there was something glaring they had quickly forgotten. Despite all the comforts that came from having their basic needs cared for in Egypt, while they were in Egypt, they did not have the time or the space to be able to worship. Their lives revolved around their work and their activity, instead of revolving around a day that we know of as Sabbath, a day where we can put everything on hold and worship our God and Creator. Now, when Moses first approached Pharaoh, the request that he had was not for Pharaoh to let the Israelites go for good. The request was actually for Pharaoh to let the Israelites go and worship. Let them go out in the wilderness, let them spend some time in worship and festival, and then they would come back and resume the work that Pharaoh had needed them to do. The central issue of the Exodus narrative is the issue of worship, and that issue is not resolved from the time they reach the other side of the Red Sea. It doesn't just become a non-issue when they land on the other side. On the other side of the sea, instead of giving God glory, instead of trusting the ability of God to provide for his children, instead of that, they give God grumbles. And the glory they do give is the glory they opt to send back to Egypt. They talk so highly about Egypt. They give the glory to Egypt for the things that they had. Oh, wasn't it wonderful in Egypt? Wasn't it better back then? And the answer is no. No, it wasn't. We live in a world that has completely forgotten what it means to Sabbath, a world that does not know how to rest. And by Sabbath, I mean something significantly bigger than a set of day of the week with a special set of rules. We live in a world that cannot put the brakes on working and earning and producing going on 24/7. Or at least we used to think that there was nothing that could put the brakes on all of that activity. When I say that the world has forgotten how to Sabbath, I do not mean that the world has forgotten how to Sabbath as opposed to the church that knows how to do it. I'm actually including the church in the group of people who have forgotten how to rest. As a bivocational pastor, I know firsthand how easy it is to be too busy to adequately observe a Sabbath rest as God intended. As if being busy with church stuff makes it somehow okay to not step away from the commotion. Busy during the week, Monday through Friday, with the special needs instructor job that I have, only to switch gears on Friday night to some of the writing and processing that I need to do to get ready for a Sunday morning message. Saturdays can get filled up with all sorts of other good activities, good and godly things. And then I'm back to writing late into the hours on a Sunday night or early Sunday morning. Go through the rhythm of a Sunday morning, get that Nazarene nap, and if you're not a Nazarene, you'll find out what that's about. But a Nazarene nap after church, and before you know it, another Sunday is in the books. And then I get up on a Monday morning, wash, rinse, and repeat. The reality is that that's not okay. That's not healthy, and that's no way for anyone to live their life on that cycle. Which is why one of the things I'm excited about and blessed by is the opportunity for a break in the middle of the madness. My special needs job is going to be closed for a few more weeks, which means I have breathing room and space in my life. A whole host of the additional responsibilities that I had, like coaching basketball for a district thing, that event and those practices are now canceled. And so that means I have more breathing room and space. I'm excited about what God can do with the space that is opened up if I will only offer it up to Him as a part of my worship. Being busy can provide a buffer from the things we would rather not address. I think that's why there's so many people who really do want to be busy and want to keep active, and they don't like it when things slow down. They aren't the least bit happy about the wide range of things that are being canceled right now. Those things that keep people busy can often be used as an escape, and now those escape routes are gone. So what do you do in the desert? Now you get to do what the Israelites got to do, which was wrestle with the big looming question found at the very end of the passage we read at the start. Is the Lord among us or not? God's children had to learn once again what it means to live in a trusting relationship with their God, trusting that God was indeed among them, trusting that God would indeed provide and protect them, even in the midst of uncertain times and places. May the words of my lips and the meditation of my heart be pleasing to you, O God, my rock and my redeemer. Have a blessed week.